This day in sports history. Well, hey there, fellow sports history enthusiasts. You found the only 7 days a week, 366 days a year sports history podcast. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Network, and you can find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. This episode is brought to you by Stirling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Stirling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at stirlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's October 30th, and on this day in 1974, it was the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad Ali, the 32-year-old and one-time heavyweight champion of the world, versus George Foreman, the 25-year-old current heavyweight champion with a 40-0 record and 37 of those wins by knockout. Because of his size, his punching power, and his ability to take a punch, Foreman was thought by many to be unbeatable. And against an older Ali, he was an overwhelming favorite coming into this one. This fight came about because of Don King and his desire to make a name for himself in the boxing sphere. He'd worked with Ali on a charity fundraising event for a Cleveland hospital earlier in the decade. He promised Ali and Foreman a $5 million purse. And the only way to raise that kind of money was to find a willing benefactor, or in this case, dictator, to put up that kind of money. King arranged with Zaire's ruling dictator Mobutu Sese Seko to host the fight and put up the money as a way to showcase the black African nation to the world. King's original slogan to promote this fight was, "From the slave ship to the championship." Mobutu was not a fan of that line, and so King borrowed from Ali's pre-fight poem and called it the Rumble in the Jungle. In order for the fight to be shown in prime time in the U.S., the fight in Kinshasa started at 4:30 a.m. local time. Now, that was not a deterrent for the 60,000 people who gathered in the stadium to watch it. Theaters in the U.S. hosted closed-circuit watch parties, and along with pay-per-view and other closed-circuit outlets around the world, it's been estimated that 1 billion people watched this fight live. Even in the pre-dawn hours, the temperature in the ring at the start of the fight was 80 degrees, and that would play into how this fight went. Foreman wanted to shut Ali's mouth quickly and get back home, so he went for several big knockout punches in the opening rounds, but he failed to land anything substantial. Ali absorbed a lot of Foreman's punches with a new strategy put in for this fight: the rope-a-dope. Ali took advantage of the loose ropes around the ring, leaning back into them, and he let Foreman punch his arms and body harmlessly. In the heat, Foreman's relentless barrage of mostly ineffective punches began to tire him out. Ali counterpunched throughout, connecting several to Foreman's face to cause some puffiness. Ali also clinched Foreman around the neck and pulled him close. In doing so, Ali put weight onto Foreman in another effort to get Big George to use more energy. After the 5th round, Ali screamed at Foreman, "Come on, George, show me something. Is that all you got?" After the 6th, Ali kept taunting Foreman, this time saying, "They told me you could punch, George. They told me you could punch as hard as Joe Louis." And just as Sonny Liston came to realize in his title fight with Ali back in '64, he could take a beating, and he kept coming after you. Foreman realized the same thing in the 7th, after delivering a hard shot to Ali's jaw that would have felled many boxers. Ali whispered in George's ear, "That all you got, George?" In the 8th round, Foreman had punched himself out with his early round exertions. His hands dropped, and he was open to a flurry of Ali punches. In the waning seconds of the 8th, Ali delivered a hard left-right combo that sent Foreman to the canvas. George was able to make it back to a knee, but referee Zach Clayton counted him out. Ali, the underdog coming in, beat the unbeatable Foreman and was heavyweight champion once again. And it was just the second time in heavyweight history that a fighter had regained his title after losing it, with Floyd Patterson being the only other one. Ali's win in this fight made the 1975 meeting with Joe Frazier in the Thrilla in Manila not only possible, but a lot more interesting. On this day in 1954, the NBA used a 24-second shot clock for the first time, and the first game that used it featured the Boston Celtics playing the Rochester Royals. This was opening day for the 1954 NBA basketball season, and the league had been getting a little tiresome. The novelty of a professional basketball league had worn off, and fans demanded more action. Not every game was a low-scoring affair, but if you were, say, an underdog in a game and you got a 6 or 8 point lead in the fourth quarter, well, stalling became a way to secure a win. Possessions would last minutes in a lot of cases. The most egregious example was a 1950 game between the Fort Wayne Pistons against the defending champ Minneapolis Lakers, who had 6'10" George Mikan. The Pistons had grabbed a lead and they took all the air out of the ball. With a lead and no incentive to shoot, and playing against the most dominant player in the league, the Pistons stalled for most of the game, and the final score was 19-18, and the combined 37 points is the lowest scoring game in NBA history. In April of 1954, the NBA owners voted to add a shot clock to the game. Syracuse Nationals owner Danny Biazone came up with the idea, and he spearheaded the effort. And he came up with 24 seconds as the ideal time for the shot clock, basing it on the logic of teams taking an average of 60 shots a game. So you got 2 teams, that's 120 shots total. Divide the total number of seconds in an NBA game, which is 2,880, by 120, and you get 24. And of course, it worked. The year prior, NBA teams averaged 80 points a game. With the shot clock added for the 54-55 season, teams averaged 93 points a game. Hall of Famer Dolph Schayes, who played for Biazone's Nationals, said it was the greatest rule change in the history of basketball. Red Auerbach credited Biazone's idea for saving the game. And of course, Auerbach was on the bench coaching his Celtics on this night when the shot clock was first used. Boston came up a little short, though, losing 98-95 to the Royals. On this day in 1963, an event at an NHL hockey game led to a much-needed update to hockey. And you are probably not going to believe it took this long to get to this point, but on this night at Maple Leaf Gardens, the Toronto Maple Leafs were playing the Montreal Canadiens. 2 guys, Toronto's Bob Pulford and Montreal's Terry Harper, were not really known for dropping the gloves and fighting, but on this night they did, and it would eventually change the game. Well, not so much the game itself, but the arenas in which the game was played. The disagreement started in the first period. As the 2 skated behind the Canadiens' net, Harper high-sticked Pulford, and they got in a little bit of a scuffle that they broke up themselves. But the tempers did not dissipate. They merely simmered just under the surface until the 2 dropped the gloves in front of Montreal's bench, with Pulford dropping Harper with a right hand. Once the 2 were broken up, penalties were assessed, and the 2 entered the penalty box. Now, at this point in time, the penalty box was not divided. It was shared. There was an older, retired gentleman usually there to make sure that the time was administered, but he was kind of off to the side, not sitting in between the players. So, the 2 guys who had just had a beef on the ice had been placed in a small, confined space to discuss their differences a little bit more. Well, it's not too hard to understand that words were exchanged between the 2, and it wasn't, "Hey Terry, how's the wife and kids?" Harper admits to saying something to Pulford, but never discussed exactly what he said. Pulford took umbrage to whatever was said. He stood up and he started pounding on Harper again. This game was being televised on Canadian television, and Commissioner Clarence Campbell was at the game, seated just a few rows behind the now full-on conflagration in the box. And here's the thing. It's not that this fight taking place was a surprise, really. It's that it hadn't really happened before. The NHL traces its founding back to 1917, but let's just go with the original 6 that got going in 1942. So that's 21 years before anyone thought that putting 2 guys who'd been beating on each other on the ice might not be a good pairing in the sin bin with nothing separating them. But the Harper-Pulford fight in the box finally got people thinking along those lines. It took 10 days to get a partition set up, but on November 8, 1962, Maple Leaf Gardens added a divider to the penalty box. The Montreal Forum was next in line for the addition, and it was suggested that all the other NHL arenas should do the same. So the next time you see 2 guys heading to the box for matching 5-minute majors for fighting, think about what it might be like if there wasn't a divider between those 2. Time now for today's Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. 1920s heartthrob actor Rudolph Valentino was charged with bigamy in 1922 after marrying Natasha Rambova. Now, the thing is, he had divorced his first wife, Jean Acker, in 1921. But a California law in place at the time stipulated you had to be divorced for more than a year before remarrying. The charge was later dropped, and there are a lot of moving parts and lurid details to this story. It wouldn't be a waste of time to do some research on your own, if you were into that sort of stuff, but I'll let you do that on your own time. That's all I've got for you for now. Check back tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.